We'd like to thank the sponsors of this week's drasha, Bev Morris and Art Boyers, marking the yortzeit of Bev's mother, Evelyn G. Butler Morris, on the 6th of Nisan, Chava Gittel Bas Shraga Feivel Alevi V'Michla Rechel, Zechron Levracha, her neshama should have an aliyah. I don't believe I ever met Bev's mother, but I know, I'm not from Pittsburgh, but I know the extended Butler family are very well known in the Pittsburgh community and beyond for their tremendous sense of community. And of course, all of us who know Bev and Art can certainly see how that beautiful love for community and for everyone around has certainly extended to Bev and Art, and Bev's mother's neshama should have an aliyah. Thank you very much. Also sponsored by Zach and Adina Newman to mark the first yortzeit of Adina's father, Dr. Judah Goldwasser, Yehuda Meir ben Mordechai Gimpel Zichron Levracha. I did know Dr. Goldwasser. I visited Woodside Synagogue for years, and I heard Dr. Goldwasser laying many, many times. And many of the beautiful things I heard about Dr. Goldwasser after his passing brought back very fond memories of just seeing him in shul, seeing him interact with others in shul, constantly a person of warmth, and the care with which he learned from the Torah, I think really spoke to a tremendous passion for Judaism, and the ability to read from the Torah for those in the shul was an opportunity to do for community. He did other things for community as well. And his spirit should live on, Baruch Hashem, through his wonderful, wonderful children and their families. And we're very fortunate to have Zach and Adina in our community and carrying on that spirit of thinking about community and how to help. And thank you very much to Zach and Adina, and his neshama should have an aliyah. And finally, the drush is also sponsored by Janet Rottenberg, Mindy and Shmuley Tolchinsky and family, Simi and Sammy Franklin family, and Jerry Rottenberg to mark the 10th yortzeit of their husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Melvin Rottenberg, Menachem Mendel ben Tzvi Yehuda, on the 9th of Nisan, Zichron Levracha. For all of us, for all those of us who have been in the community for a good period of time, certainly know, and those of us who haven't been here as long should know and probably have heard that Mel Rottenberg was a past president of the shul. Really, really one of Rabbi Einer's great partners over the decades, both for his work in the shul, his work in the yeshiva. I was actually just speaking about it, and I wasn't speaking about him particularly, but he was one of the people who came to mind. I was giving a class earlier this week, and I was speaking about the fact that people talk so much about what rabbis accomplished in communities, and that, of course, is extremely appropriate. But I was also reflecting on the fact that rabbis need partners, and Rabbi Einer Zichron Levracha accomplished so much in our community. But part of why he was able to accomplish so much was he had stellar partners, and one of the greatest of his partners was Mel Rottenberg, and of course he and Mrs. Rottenberg, Tibat L'chaim, were a team, and she should have nachas from everything that's developed in our community, and of course that spirit carries on to each of the Rottenberg children and their families, K'nai Nahara, of a tremendous sense of community. Thank you to all of the sponsors, and all the dedications this week are clearly very special people, and their neshamos should have aliyos and much nachas from their families. I want to take a few minutes to just talk about some general aspects in shul. One is I want to take the opportunity on behalf of the shul to thank the Assistant Rabbi Search Committee. They put in tremendous work, each of them. So much time, so many meetings, so much consideration. I want to specifically thank Dr. Marquez, the chair of the committee, and through their work, they presented us with two stellar candidates. And it's a little bit, I'm sure it's a little bit of a downer for people. I know many, many people have been thinking about, since we had the Prabhas, have been thinking about the strengths of each candidate and who they would vote for, and analyzing the candidates and analyzing the shul's needs. It's an exciting thing to get involved in a vote like this. It's important and it's exciting also. And it's a little bit of a downer that now we don't have a choice of which candidate, because Rabbi Wein, one of our two excellent candidates, accepted a position elsewhere, and we wish him much, much hatzlacha. But I just want to state the obvious for a moment. What was clear from these past 2 weekends was that we had two wonderful candidates to choose from, each one with their unique strengths, each one with wonderful wives who also could bring so much to our shul and community. And I'll tell you, I am very, very excited. I mean, we still have to have a vote over it, and I would urge you all to come to shul, or not to come, excuse me, but to vote virtually. We need to have a vote to hire Rabbi Pastalnik, and I hope that the vote is in favor of hiring Rabbi Pastalnik. I hope the Pastalniks accept, God willing. I hope that they're voted in, and then I hope they accept. And if those two things happen, I am very, very confident that our shul will benefit tremendously. I think all segments of the shul will benefit in various ways from Rabbi Rebbetzin Pastalnik. I look forward to working with him. But really, my main point is I want to thank the candidates. I want to thank the candidates and their wives for all their time. But I also want to thank the committee as well, and a big yasher koach. And I'm very excited for us as a shul, and I would urge you all to come and vote, and to vote to offer the position to Rabbi Pastalnik. One more administrative matter. There was an email that went out this week that, to me, is one of the most exciting emails the shul has sent in a very long time, and that is based on the new CDC guidelines regarding vaccinations. People who want to be very conscientious about COVID matters, which I would strongly encourage, are able to invite others over in a way that we were very much limited from doing in the past. I don't want to go into the details now. You can check it out on the CDC website. There's pretty good description of it in the link which was sent out in the email. The link is also available on the shul's website. The shul's hospitality committee, very soon after the CDC came out with its announcement, and I want to thank Todd Friedman, the chair, but really all the members of the committee, jumped into action to figure out how to maximize this. And what they did is they created a matching system. So just personally, my wife and I are Baruch Hashem, both fully vaccinated. Have 2 weeks afterwards, Baruch Hashem, our children aren't vaccinated. But based on CDC guidelines, we can have guests that are fully vaccinated. So it's a very exciting thing for us. It's an exciting thing for us. It's the way we like to have Shabbos and Yom Tov meals. It's wonderful for our children. And I would like to think it's wonderful for people also. So many people in our community have been sitting alone for over a year. Over a year. Shabbos and Yom Tov. Do you know how many people in our community had the Seder alone last year? Very difficult. And we can do something about it now. But the very awkward thing is, what are you going to do? You're going to call somebody up and say, are you vaccinated? If you are, we'd love to have you. And if you're not, sorry, let's get back together in a few months. It's a very awkward thing. The beautiful thing about this matching system is you could just put into the system, hi, I'd like to have people, they need to be vaccinated. Or if everyone in your household is fully vaccinated, you could really have one guest who's not vaccinated. Again, it creates a matching system. The last point I just want to emphasize is, even if you're not vaccinated, even if no one in your household is vaccinated, based on the CDC guidelines, you could still have people who are fully vaccinated. Many of the over 65 in our community are fully vaccinated right now. Not all, but many of them are fully vaccinated right now, which would mean that if there'd be a person who might otherwise be sitting alone for the Seder or for Yom Tov meals, even if your family hasn't had any vaccinations, through this matching system, you could have such a person over. So I'd really urge you to, if you haven't already, and if you're a person who would be alone and you're not set up for all the meals of the Yom Tovim, I'd urge you to go onto the site. Please, it's a great opportunity. No one should be alone this Pesach if they don't want to be alone. And it's not Yom Tov without having guests. It's not Yom Tov without being with people. Obviously it is, but it's not the same. So the link can be found on the shul's website. Really urge everyone to participate. Okay, what I'd like to speak about traditionally in Klal Yisrael, the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha, is normally, of course, given the Shabbos immediately preceding Pesach, but traditionally when Shabbos is Erev Pesach, as it is this year, the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha is given the Shabbos before. The reason for that is traditionally the greatest purpose of the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha was to educate the community about halachos of Pesach. When it's a 3-day Yom Tov leading into going from Shabbos into Pesach, you're not going to help people very much telling them all these halachos of Pesach if they can't do much about it, because the Seder is in an hour. So therefore, the practice is when Shabbos is Erev Pesach, they have the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha, the preceding Shabbos, which speaks to the fact that more than anything, the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha traditionally has been about practical halacha. I don't want to give a full-blown Shabbos HaGadol Drasha this year. God willing, with Hashem's help, unless we're in Yerushalayim, in which case you could have much more interesting people to listen to than me. God willing, if we're not in Yerushalayim, we'll be back together in the shul next year, Shabbos HaGadol, and I'll go back to putting you all to sleep as we progress. But in the virtual context, I don't want to give a long drasha. What I would like to do, and I apologize to those who have heard enough of this topic already. If you've heard enough of this topic, you can just turn off the video now. What I would like to do, I would like to go through, hopefully with some good clarity, what happens this year because Shabbos is Erev Pesach. As I speak, I hopefully will address some further questions that people have asked me after shiurim and after literature has come out. And maybe along the way, we'll give a little bit of a better understanding of how we do things even in regular years. So, but again, if you feel you've got that completely mastered and you've heard enough of it, I want to wish you a good Shabbos. Mirz Hashem, next week, I will, the drasha for next week will be more of a message about the feeling of Pesach, sort of a perspective for Pesach. But this week it'll just be this halachic discussion. Okay, we'll go in a time sequence here. The first thing that's different this year, because Shabbos is Erev Pesach, is when the fast of the firstborn is. Of course, it doesn't have to be. There doesn't have to be a fast for the firstborn. If a person attends a siyum on that day, then one doesn't have to fast, which of course is what most of firstborns in our community do, attend the siyum. By the way, the whole concept of the siyum is because a person attends a siyum, so now to eat is a sudas mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to eat. So the fasting is a minhag. So we sort of negate the minhag of fasting because we attended something for which there's a mitzvah to eat. And then once we ate early in the day, so then we broke our fast. So then we're not fasting anymore. The reason I mentioned this is it's not just that a person is supposed to attend a siyum, Erev Pesach, or on the day of the fast. It's that they attend the siyum, and then because of the siyum they eat. It should be they eat then, at that time. Of course, normally in shul we have the much beloved macaroons and orange juice downstairs. Because of COVID, we're not going to be doing that this year. But people should eat ASAP after they hear the siyum. Just keep that in mind. It wouldn't be that I would go to the siyum and go shopping at Shalom's and then come home and have something to eat. Person goes home and has something to eat. They don't have to speed home. But the next thing they should do, they should go home and have something to eat. I do feel it's acceptable for people who need a siyum to attend the siyum over Zoom or phone. I think that's acceptable. To state the obvious, the idea of a siyum on Tanis Bechoros is a very, very different level of obligation than, let's say, hearing Megillah or something of that sort. If a person had a choice to be in person or to be by Zoom, of course it would be better to be in person. But if it's difficult for whatever reason, I think it's fine for it to be by Zoom. Interestingly, the siyum is not on Shabbos, because if one wouldn't be attending a siyum, one wouldn't be fasting on Shabbos. So the designation of the date is based on when you could fast. So we wouldn't fast on Shabbos. Now, we normally try not to have fast days on Friday. It's not unheard of, but when at all possible, we try not to have fast days on Friday. So being that Friday is not Erev Pesach anyway, if Friday was Erev Pesach, we would have the siyum on Friday. But since Friday is not actually Erev Pesach and it's a pushback anyway, we push it back to Thursday. And of course, the idea of the tanis of the fast, if a person doesn't attend the siyum, is because it's our thanks to God for saving our firstborn from the plague of the firstborn that struck down so many Egyptians near the end of our stay in Egypt. Okay, after that, Thursday is more or less a regular day until Thursday evening. At approximately 8 o'clock Thursday evening, we do B'dikas Chametz. B'dikas Chametz, why should we do B'dikas Chametz? B'dikas Chametz is the night before Pesach. Friday night is the night before Pesach. True, but we wouldn't make sense to do the B'dika Friday night because, of course, we walk around with a candle. You wouldn't be doing that on Shabbos. And then what's supposed to happen is once I find the chametz, I'm supposed to be destroying it, which, customarily it's burnt. That would be complicated enough to do on Shabbos because, of course, we don't burn chametz. We don't burn things on Shabbos. The rabbis did want us to do the B'dika at night. They felt that we would see the chametz better with the candle and the like. And so therefore, being that we don't do B'dika Friday night, the B'dika is done Thursday night. Because this is the standard time to do the B'dika, and we will destroy the chametz the next morning, God willing, we do make a bracha when we do the B'dika, even though it's a night earlier than we normally do it. We make a bracha when we do the B'dika, and we say the bittul, the nullification of the chametz, after we're done with the B'dika. What we're doing when we say that nullification is we're saying, Hashem, if there's any chametz that I missed in my search, I hereby declare it ownerless and null and void. A common question every year is what's a person supposed to do if they're going out of town before the B'dika? The halacha for that is the last night that a person is home before they go out of town, person should do the B'dika. When a person is doing the B'dika earlier than the prescribed time, we're doing the B'dika earlier, but that's the time you're supposed to do it, Thursday night. When a person is doing it earlier than Thursday night because they're not going to be home Thursday night, they do the B'dika without a bracha, but they still say the bittul afterwards. Fine. That's Thursday night. Now, Friday morning. Now, Friday morning is interesting because Friday morning, of course, is not Erev Pesach. Normally, we burn the chametz Erev Pesach morning. It's a Torah obligation to be done with my chametz by a certain point during the daytime at Erev Pesach. That's not in play per se Friday before Yom Tov because Friday's not Erev Pesach. I'm allowed to eat chametz throughout the day on Friday. I can eat chametz Friday night. But we still have a mitzvah to destroy our chametz. It's a pasuk in the Torah. Tashbis or mivatechem. We should destroy our chametz. We can't burn the chametz on Shabbos, and many other methods of destruction would also not be feasible on Shabbos. So what are we to do? We're supposed to destroy the chametz, but Erev Pesach is Shabbos. So the answer is pretty logical. The answer is, well, we destroy the chametz on Friday. Now, the minhag Klal Yisrael is to destroy the chametz through burning. This is not a this year thing. This is true in general. If it will be difficult to burn the chametz, if it's complicated to burn the chametz, person can destroy the chametz in other ways. Person can break the chametz up into small pieces and flush it down the toilet. Okay, when is a person supposed to dispose of the chametz on Friday? Theoretically, the answer should be whenever one wants. On a regular Erev Pesach, I'm under the gun because there's a certain time the rabbis tell me I can't have chametz anymore. I can't own chametz anymore by a certain time. So whatever chametz I'm going to destroy, I better do it by time X. I'm not under that gun per se this year because it's not Erev Pesach. It's the day before Erev Pesach. Even so, the halacha is very interesting. The halacha is that I'm obligated, or what I'm supposed to, burn the chametz at the same time I would burn the chametz of Erev Pesach on a normal year. Why? The rabbis didn't want me to fall out of the normal routine of things. We know it's a drill, certain time by which you're supposed to burn the chametz on Erev Pesach. So the rabbis wanted me to keep that routine. And so therefore, even though I can go home and eat chametz hours after I burnt the chametz, still the chametz is supposed to be burnt by the standard time by which the chametz is normally supposed to be burnt. For us in Silver Spring, that would be 11:58. I'm supposed to burn or otherwise destroy the chametz by 11:58 on Friday morning. Declaring the chametz ownerless is not destroying the chametz. That was the bittul component. I need to physically do something to the chametz. Not all of my chametz. Obviously, some of my chametz I can sell, but certainly the chametz I find from the bedika, I should physically destroy in some way. Ideally, it's burning. I could break it up into small pieces and flush it down the toilet. I should do that by 11:58 on Friday morning. Interesting wrinkle. This year, we don't say the bittul after we destroy the chametz. Normally, the routine is that we do say the bittul after we destroy the chametz. But this year, we don't say bittul after we destroy the chametz on Friday. The reason for that is also extremely logical. There are two texts of bittul. One text of bittul is the one we say after the bedika, which, as we already described, is really intended for chametz that I missed during the bedika process. The other text of bittul is, God, any chametz that's left, maybe I missed it, maybe there's chametz in my car, maybe there's chametz that I set aside to eat that I knew about and I just forgot about it. Any chametz that I do know about, that I don't know about, it's all batel. It's all done. That's the story. That bittul does not make sense to say on Friday this year. Because as we said a few moments ago, I could come back in the house after I burnt the chametz, and I can have a sandwich with chametz. I can make Hamotzi on Challah Friday night. So to say after I burnt the chametz, any chametz, I don't want to have anything to do with it, it's a totally disingenuous statement, and therefore we don't say it. So we do not say the bittul after destroying the chametz on Friday. I should also mention, I do not believe that we're going to have a communal chametz burning this year. People can do it on their own, and if it's difficult, they can break it, the chametz into small pieces and flush down the toilet. Okay, another factor along similar lines to destroying the chametz is selling the chametz. Now, of course, there's no Torah obligation to sell our chametz. There's no rabbinic obligation to sell our chametz. Our obligation is to destroy the chametz and say the bittul. But many of us have the practice, and this is definitely discussed in halacha, many of us have the practice of selling some of our chametz so that we're not in violation of owning chametz on Pesach, and we're not obligated to destroy it before Pesach. When is that chametz sold? So this is also a bit complicated. Let's just think this through. Normally, the chametz is sold Erev Pesach morning. I'm not doing transactions Shabbos morning this year. We don't do that kind of stuff on Shabbos. I'm not handling money. I'm not making different acquisitions with the non-Jew. So that's out. That's not going to happen on Shabbos. So obviously, the sale of chametz is going to happen on Friday. When is the sale of chametz going to happen on Friday? So this is an interesting thing as well. Technically speaking, the chametz could be sold, a few minutes before Shabbos begins. I'm allowed to own chametz Friday afternoon. Why not? It seems the common practice is similar to the burning, to want to sort of be in the routine and not fall out of the routine of how things work on Erev Pesach. And so we burn it by the time that you would burn chametz on Erev Pesach in a normal year. So too the practice seems to be to sell the chametz by the time you would sell it in a normal year. So the chametz sale that I participate in, I believe, is supposed to take place, around the same time that would happen on a normal Erev Pesach. And that means that those selling chametz with me, I would encourage you to have your chametz put away in set-aside locations before, let's say, around 11:45 Friday morning. Just a reminder, you're selling the chametz, and you're also renting the location in which the chametz is found. So if you have chametz in a freezer downstairs, you should tape the freezer shut as a reminder not to go in there. But the point is, technically speaking, whether it be a segment of the freezer, whether it be the entire freezer, you're saying the chametz in there belongs to the non-Jew, and the section that the chametz is in is being rented to the non-Jew. That's how it works in terms of the sale of chametz. That's true. That's true every year. Okay. So we've discussed the bdika. We've discussed the physical destruction of the chametz. We've discussed the sale of the chametz. Now it's Friday night. Now the big question that's on so many people's minds is, how does Hamotzi for the Shabbos meals work this year? A Shabbos meal, we certainly want to have Hamotzi. It's certainly appropriate. What are my options for Hamotzi? For Friday night, I certainly could have chametz. There's no problem with having chametz on Friday night. Of course, many of us would be a little bit nervous to have chametz. It's two issues. One issue is we're just nervous about chametz floating around the house. The other issue is we have to really budget it coming into Shabbos. Think about this for a second. I destroyed whatever chametz I destroyed Friday morning. I set aside whatever chametz I set aside for sale Friday morning. So whatever chametz I bring into Shabbos, basically I've got to eat all that chametz by the deadline Shabbos morning. If there are crumbs, I can flush them down the toilet, but that's not going to work well for me. If I have like 3 rolls left, it's not going to. So if I'm stuck, I may give my chametz as a gift to a non-Jew before the deadline Shabbos morning. But just keep in mind, if you want to have chametz for Hamotzi over Shabbos, you really have to figure out how much chametz do you exactly need and really leave that amount over and not more. So one option would be to have chametz. If I have chametz for Hamotzi Friday night, how should I do it? Practically speaking, I would say you could do it one of two ways. Practically speaking, you could either go to some area on your property that you're not nervous about chametz being there, maybe on your porch, maybe if it's nice, in your backyard, whatever it is. Wash, go outside and make hamotzi, eat all the chametz you're going to eat, brush yourself off, and then, maybe wash your mouth out before you come to the table, and then eat a Pesach meal in your dining room. Now, if you do it that way, I just want to remind you of one thing, which is that when I bench, I have to bench in a place that I've eaten bread. So, obviously, in that model that we just described, you're eating your bread outside. You're not eating your bread at the dining room table, in which case you have your bread outside or on your porch, you come inside, you eat your Pesach meal, and then when it's time for benching, you go back to the place that you had Hamotzi. As long as you have a kazayas of Hamotzi before you come inside for the meal, you're fine in terms of shifting back and forth. That we won't get into the details of that discussion now. So that's one option with chametz on Shabbos. Another option with chametz on Shabbos is in some ways less complicated, in some ways more complicated. The other option is just have hamotzi at your dining room table. And the way you would do it, let's say you would take out a plastic tablecloth, take a plastic tablecloth, maybe you use disposables that night, take a plastic tablecloth, eat over the plastic tablecloth. Make sure, be very careful, eat the chametz over the plastic tablecloth or over your disposable plates. Just make sure you're eating it over the controlled area. Wrap up the tablecloth or plates or whatever it is. And then, maybe, brush yourself off, wash your mouth out, whatever it is, and then continue with your meal. And then you could have Hamotzi. That's where you had the Hamotzi. You could eat a Pesach meal for the rest of the meal. And then you could bench. Obviously, if you wanted to eat a Chametz meal, you could, but it's just going to be a little bit complicated. Someone asked me this week, what are you supposed to do with the crumbs? They're going to be crumbs from the Chametz. So, a few crumbs here, a few crumbs there, probably makes sense. Just flush them down the toilet. But then someone asked, yeah, but come on. I just spoke about a plastic tablecloth. You don't think there's going to be any crumbs in the plastic tablecloth? So a few crumbs that I make sure to remove from my area of eating are not an issue for Pesach. 3 infinitesimal crumbs on your plastic tablecloth. I tried to get the crumbs off of my tablecloth. I shook it out outside, or I brushed them off into the toilet. Either of those solutions, whatever trace amounts of chametz might still be left on my tablecloth, it's not a problem. I shouldn't have it sitting on my table when I'm eating over Pesach. That's bad news. But, a few crumbs it could be in my kitchen garbage can. It's not a problem. Okay? Okay, that's one Hamotzi option. Question. Could someone have Hamotzi on matzah Friday night? So this is a very interesting thing. Many of us, of course, have the practice of not eating matzah before Pesach. Many of us have the practice of not eating matzah a month before Pesach. Some of us have the practice of not eating matzah 2 weeks before Pesach. Different practices. On top, so if you have that practice, it's probably not going to work to have matzah Friday night. On top of that, there's halacha, not a minhag, but halacha of not eating matzah Erev Pesach. The reason we don't eat matzah Erev Pesach is because we want it to be that the matzah that I eat at the Seder is new and fresh and exciting. So we don't eat matzah Erev Pesach. Question, is that Erev Pesach day or the entirety of the calendar date of Erev Pesach? Practical application would be, can I make Hamotzi on matzah Friday night? I understand I can't make Hamotzi on matzah Shabbos morning. I understand that. That's this halacha. But if I don't have a minhag about not eating matzah before Pesach, and it's just this halacha of Erev Pesach, may I eat matzah Friday night? So we say, there are different opinions, but there are definitely opinions that say, Mishabura for one says, that a person could eat matzah Friday night. So technically speaking, if one didn't have the practice of not eating matzah before Pesach, at least Friday night, one could make hamotzi on matzah. You could do that. Technically speaking, that would be an option. It would not be an option Shabbos day, but it would be an option Friday night. Okay, any other solutions? So there's one more solution, which is not ideal, but if a person is very worried about chametz, in my opinion, it's acceptable, and that is egg matzah. To make the hamotzi on egg matzah. Egg matzah is considered fundamentally different from the matzah with which we could be yotze at the Seder. And since egg matzah is so fundamentally different, from that matzah, it's acceptable to eat egg matzah on Erev Pesach. So a person could make hamotzi on egg matzah. Now let me just be clear about this. First of all, like with regular matzah, if you buy egg matzah, you just have to make sure it's actually marked kosher l'Pesach. Just have to be careful about that. Fine. So, healthy Ashkenazim don't eat egg matzah over Pesach. So what do I gain by having egg matzah over chametz? Why is that any less stressful? Well, we don't eat egg matzah over Pesach, and I would encourage you, if you're having egg matzah, at your Pesach meal, for Shabbos before Pesach, I would encourage you to sort of, brush any egg matzah off of your plates and the like, let's say before you wash the dishes and stuff, before Yom Tov, whatever, for Yom Tov, on Yom Tov. But the bottom line is, egg matzah, it's all right to have egg matzah in your house on Pesach. If there's some errant crumbs of egg matzah lying around the floor, it's not a big deal. And if for some reason egg matzah, fell into my salad or something, on Pesach, it's not appropriate, but it's far less serious than chametz. So you wouldn't have to sit there and make Hamotzi outside an Egg Matzah. You would just make Hamotzi in a normal way at your table. You wouldn't have two different sets of tablecloths. You wouldn't have to wash your mouth out. You wouldn't have to do any of that stuff. It would just be that I would just sort of try to make sure that there's not, residual Egg Matzah on my utensils. That would be the only thing. And of course, on Pesach, I would make sure not to eat Egg Matzah at all. If I was a healthy Ashkenazi. Baruch Hashem, I'm a healthy Ashkenazi. Okay. So that's for Friday night. Now, Shabbos morning has its own wrinkle, besides the Hamotzi question, because Shabbos morning is Erev Pesach, of course. Come 10:42, I'm not allowed to eat matzah. I'm not allowed to eat chametz anymore on Erev Pesach. So now, how am I supposed to make Hamotzi for Shabbos lunch? How does that work? Matzah is really out. Egg matzah would be an option. Egg matzah would still be okay. But even egg matzah, I could only eat until 10:42. As long as I'm a healthy Ashkenazi, I can only eat it until 10:42. So chametz and egg matzah are in the same boat for Ashkenazim in terms of timing. I'm supposed to be finished eating my chametz by 10:42. So definitely not matzah for Hamotzi on Shabbos. I could have either chametz or egg matzah. Either way, I have to be finished eating it by 10:42. I don't have to be finished my meal by 10:42, but I can't eat more chametz or egg matzah past 10:42. So if I wash at 10:30 and I have my kazayis of hamotzi or my kazayis of egg matzah, by 10:42, no more. Okay. So how am I supposed to do that? Most of us have lunch after 10:42. So our minyanim are actually going to be earlier this Shabbos, or at least the second shift is going to be earlier this Shabbos. Basically, there's two options. One option, but either way, for Shabbos lunch, a person needs to be finished with their hamotzi before 10:42. And then a person proceeds with their meal as normal. That's one option. And we'll daven early to facilitate that. The next question is what happens with Shalosh Shudas. So normally Shalosh Shudas is supposed to be in the afternoon. So I can't have it before 10:42. So, if I'm Sephardim actually are allowed to eat Egg Matzah on Pesach. And you're allowed to eat Egg Matzah Erev Pesach because it's so different than regular Matzah. So if I'm Sephardi, I can make my Hamotzi on Shalosh Shudas, Sudash Lishit, on Egg Matzah. And that would be okay. I should have it before halfway through the afternoon in the checklist that I sent out for the shul. I gave a time. Forgive me. I forgot to note the time before I began this video. It's a little bit before 4:00 if I remember correctly, but it's on that document. I need to begin it before that time. That's if I'm Sephardi. If I'm Ashkenazi, I have two choices. One choice, which I think is the more common solution, is I just have Shalosh Shudas Shabbos afternoon, and I just don't have a motzi. There are opinions that say I can have other foods for Shalosh Shudas. I could have chicken, fish, meat, fruit. I could do those things for Shalosh Shudas. So normally it's appropriate to wash for Shalosh Shudas. But what can you do? This is a complicated day. It's not an option. That's the most common thing to do. I should not eat so much that I won't have any appetite for the Seder. But I can eat Shabbos afternoon. I can have a piece of gefilte fish, and that's fine. That's one solution. I may eat mezonos if it's cooked and not baked. So I certainly can't have chametz. That's certainly out. But I could have, for example, kanedalach matzah balls. But I couldn't have, let's say, a matzah meal cake. I couldn't have that on Erev Pesach. So if I'm Sephardi, I can have egg matzah. If I'm Ashkenazi, I can't have egg matzah. I could have either matzah balls or those other foods, fish, chicken, meat, fruit. Just have in mind that it's for Shalosh Shudas. If I'm Sephardi doing egg matzah, or I'm having matzah balls, I should make sure to start it before that time I mentioned before, around 4:00. But if I'm having a piece of gefilte fish, I can have it late in the afternoon on Shabbos as well, as long as it's before sunset. And I should be careful not to eat too much, so I don't have any appetite. One more solution for Shalosh Shudas. Another solution for Shalosh Shudas is I could make sure to daven early Shabbos morning. Everyone's going to have to daven early Shabbos morning. I could wash. I could make Hamotzi. I could go for a walk around the block. And whenever 15, 20 minutes after I wash, have Hamotzi, bench, go for a walk around the block. And 15 or 20 minutes after I bench, I could wash again and get in that second washing before 10:42. And then I would have had Shalosh Shudas on either Chametz or Egg Matzah, and then I still wouldn't be eating either of these things past 10:42. That's the other option. The idea of walking around the block and creating a little bit of a buffer is so that I'm not wasting brachos. There's a concept of not wasting brachos, not benching and then washing again for no good reason. That's in terms of Shalosh Shudas. I should mention that I have to make sure, because Shabbos is Erev Pesach, I have to make sure to be rid of any chametz by 11:58 Shabbos morning. Again, I can't eat chametz past 10:42. The rabbis were very worried that if we let a person eat chametz too long in Erev Pesach, because they're eating, they lose track of time. The rabbis were also worried that a person would lose track of time in terms of destroying the chametz. So they make us destroy the chametz earlier than the Torah does, which is an hour later. But the rabbi said it's okay to have chametz around, just don't be eating it past 10:42 this year, how the times work out. But the prohibition of owning chametz only kicks in, even rabbinically, about an hour later, which is this year 11:58. So by 11:58, whatever chametz crumbs I have lying around that aren't infinitesimal, I should flush down the toilet or just throw it out to the air. And if I am stuck with like one more roll that I forgot about or whatever it is, I should find the non-Jew and just give it to them before 11:58. That would be that solution. Also, before 11:58, I say the bittul, the nullification of the chametz. Now I can say it. Not the version that I say following the bedika, but the version I normally say at the burning of the chametz. Now I can say it. I have to say it before 11:58. But once I've dealt with all my chametz and it's before 11:58, I say that bittul, because now I can say, God, I don't want to have anything to do with chametz anymore. Okay, I think we touched on all the relevant points. I hope we touched on all the relevant points for Shabbos for Erev Pesach. Thank you if you're still on. Thank you for patiently bearing with me. I hope this makes sense. If there's anything unclear, please, please, please do not hesitate to contact me over the course of the coming week, by email, by phone, whatever is good. A reminder to arrange for the sale of chametz online. There's a link to that on the shul's website. And if you would like to do the kinyan with me in person, you can. But even if you do the kinyan with me in person, I'd ask you to put the information in online. And I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos. It's a little bit of a stressful week, of course, ahead. And the 3-day Yom Tov is also going to be a little stressful. But I hope that Shabbos at the beginning of the 3-day Yom Tov, it's complicated to prepare for. Once we have it, it actually will allow us to come into the Seder, God willing, well rested. Okay, a wonderful Shabbos to everyone. Take good care.